Welcome to this new episode of the Teachers of Europe podcast. This is a podcast to support teachers across Europe in addressing common classroom challenges and featuring educators that can inspire others to follow in their steps. Now, this is a podcast that has its home on the European School Education Platform, which is a European Union platform for schools funded by the Erasmus Plus program. My name is Benjamin Hertz, and I'm your host for this episode. Today, we're going to explore a fascinating topic of developing student data literacy. Now, students have to deal with data everywhere, even though they might not always be aware of it. When they scroll through their news feeds on social media, when they go shopping, across most of their school subjects in some formal way, and whenever they take some form of decision, it's usually connected or can be connected to data. However, we also know that many need awareness of how data is used around them and how it impacts their lives. And they really need structured opportunities to learn how to interpret, question, and use data themselves in a responsible way. But developing such literacy, data literacy in schools, goes beyond teaching technical skills, such as reading charts or calculating averages, and really involves fostering certain habits of mind. So going through the world with a certain curiosity, skepticism, and ethical awareness. And as part of that, the ability to recognize bias or misleading representations. And therefore, data literacy is really relevant across subjects. It's not just a maths or science issue, but it's also relevant in the social studies, languages, sports, and music. Can be seen everywhere. And despite data playing such a huge role in our modern societies, data literacy is often actually not taught in schools or not actively taught in schools. And I think one of the reasons for that is that teachers often are uncertain about how to do that, about how to integrate data concepts, ideas meaningfully into their teaching and how to maybe connect it to real life contexts. And probably most importantly, how to scaffold it in such a way that it doesn't become overwhelming for the students themselves, because data can be very complex and overwhelming even for us as teachers ourselves. So we're not going to talk about teachers' data literacy, but that's a separate conversation, although probably an important one to have as part of this. But I'm looking forward to addressing some of these issues here. And I hope that we can explore how teachers can approach some of these questions by hearing about some practical examples, classroom strategies, and reflections from our guest from Denmark today. So a warm welcome to Jakob Damgaard Larsen from Denmark. Jakob is a teacher and special consultant at the Future Classroom Lab in Copenhagen, where he specializes on the didactics of using technology in the classroom. So welcome, Jakob. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and what have you worked on in the past?
Thank you, Benjamin. Thanks for having me. Yeah. My name is Jakob, and I work as a consultant in the Future Classroom Lab, mainly around a new subject in Denmark called technology comprehension, which is about to land next summer. I also do a lot of work around AI. We created our own AI called SkoleGPT, SkoleGPT translated in Denmark, and we are teaching teachers how to teach about AI in their classroom with their pupils. And then I have a huge love for board games as well, as I also use them in the Future Classroom Lab.
Excellent. Thanks, Jakob. Great to have you with us. And AI, it's unavoidable to talk about it in any context at the moment. But of course, data literacy is also a very important component of AI
Exactly.
and AI literacy.
Yeah, I actually started in the Future Classroom Lab investigating data literacy and teaching around data combined with mathematics. So I have a lot of experience in data literacy use in school, but it is a hard subject and a hard topic for a lot of teachers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's dig a bit deeper into it and see how we can sort of disentangle that and hopefully help some colleagues across Europe in approaching this with their students. How would you actually define data literacy for students?
I turn it around a little bit. So when I go to classrooms, I often ask the students, what is data? And I've been doing this for the last 10 years. And one fun story is that 10 years ago, when I asked the pupils regarding if it was like first or ninth grade, there were always some pupils who said, data, that's something you can choose instead of Wi-Fi. And I shouldn't be doing that because it costs a lot of money. But right now, it's actually shifted. So when I go to classrooms now and I ask, what is data? I think like in every classroom, there's at least one pupil who can say something in line with, it's everything. It's informatics, it's knowledge, it's wisdom. So I think even though it's still a hard subject, some pupils or students actually know about what data is right now.
That's a fascinating story. So it suggests that the perceptions are changing. So can you maybe say a bit more about why that's the case and why it is increasingly important for learners across age groups, probably,
Mm.
due to
So
yeah.
I think it's because they are getting the effect of data. They are seeing the effect firsthand very early. So if I ask them to give examples, the examples I'll get is like, for example, YouTube. If they all turn on YouTube and go to the front place, they'll see different stuff, and they'll say something. It's about cookies and data that knows them and knows which videos they're used to see. So they know that when they are watching videos on YouTube, they deliver data for the company to provide them new videos.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Feeding the algorithm, right? That dynamic that they experience very early onwards and the impact of
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah,
I,
excellent.
and it's very, I mean, they know something, but they don't know how much data and how valuable that data is. So that's
Indeed.
another story.
Indeed. Yeah. Okay. So, how do you think teachers can introduce some of these concepts through
Mm.
everyday classroom activities? How can teachers
Yeah,
approach
I
this?
think there's different approaches. One is like talking about the intentions of the companies who are using the data. So like exploiting like the value of the data, talking about how it's used, talking about how much data it is and how valuable it actually is. And that could be done through like a role play and like different scenarios where you investigate and analyze and interpret what data is and does. And then there's the other leg where you work with data, you create data sheets and you analyze the data sheets and you use the that analyzed to make new decisions in the classroom, for example. I've done that in projects before.
And can I ask, from what age group would you say can we start exploring these concepts of that are linked to data literacy?
I think I'm starting quite early. So in Denmark, when I started teaching, I was a first grade math teacher. So it's the age around 6, 7, and the age there we did like we call it just investigation. So math investigation, and I asked all the children to bring out their book and then decide what investigation did they want to do in the classroom. And it was typically like favorite ice cream flavor or favorite soda or favorite computer game. And then they went around each other in the classroom and they asked everybody and they put like just simple lines into their categories. Some made like another like other categories. Some made the pupils choose between 3 or 4 or 5 categories. And then when they were done, they needed to count all their lines. Does it match with the ones like if you had 24 students in the classroom, did it align? And then I did this like for a quarter or 20 minutes each math lessons. And as the investigation ended up, the pupils presented their investigation in like bar graphs at the board. And we discussed if it was truthfully or if it was different, if it was what they had expected, or if the one who went around and asked if he influenced their choice. So we talked about how you can manipulate data. And then we went on to draw all the graphs in like in bars in the schoolyard with chalk. And at the end, we went actually to the we have this computer room. It's not very popular, but when I taught back in 2016, we had the room, and the whole class went into Excel and they input their data, and then they made Excel make this digital bar graph, which we printed and had hanging in the graph in the classroom. And that was a very popular subject, and the kids loved it and was very relevant. And we talked about data without calling it data.
Well, thank you, Jakob, for that really fascinating example. I must admit, it took me a moment to pick up your 6, 7 reference there, which is a clear sign that I'm not in the classroom anymore every day. But yeah, I did notice it in the end. Excellent. I mean, the example you've given now is from a maths context, and I think really nice example for those age groups and that context. But you also mentioned earlier that, for example, using role plays to explore the dynamics of companies using data and the value of data or these type of things. But where should teachers do this? In what context can this be
Hmm.
organized? I remember I was a history teacher and I was so sort of constrained by the curriculum, moving from one step of the curriculum to the next. And I think I would have struggled to find a place to do exactly this kind of exploration, even though I knew it would have been very important and valuable for the students. So do you have any thoughts on that?
First of all, I'm unfortunately maybe very anti-curriculum. I think that the curriculum should be as small as possible to make the teacher has as much power as possible to decide what is important for the pupils to know within, of course, a subject. And I can see data literacy go into tons of subject. But if I just take like in the Danish context, we have this new subject called technology comprehension, which is going to be a part of our mother tongue language like Danish and mathematics and something called science and technology. And within those three subjects, I think like talking about the data literacies and role play, it would be within mother tongue. I would teach this.
Okay, great. I mean, I think this technological comprehension subject is a great idea, but the reality is that probably for many teachers across Europe, it's not a reality. So finding space within their existing context is really important. Okay, so can you maybe give us a couple more examples how data literacy could be developed beyond mathematics or ICT lessons? So if a language teacher comes to you, or a music teacher, or somebody else, what advice would you give them?
Okay, I have two examples we can dive into. The first one being like born for my interest of data, like big data and how we can use that in school and in mathematics. Again, I'm a math teacher, so that's the way I'm going often. One thing I thought was very difficult was easy way to present data in a like eatable way, like it's easy to understand, like the way you showed it, and also to get data sets that are that you can know how works. And actually back in 2022 when ChatGPT came out, we got a new tool for analyzing and investigating data. Of course, it can take a lot of tokens and use that to analyze the big data sets, but we also got a tool which can create simulated data. So now in the classroom, you can create data sets that are very relevant for the students. They can decide what it should be about. So for example, let's say in a smaller grade, it's very fun to explore which games should be played when you have a break. Then you can make AI do a spreadsheet with 20 games, how fun they are on a scale from 1 to 10, how many can attend the game, does it need to be moderated by an adult, how big is the chance for conflicts in the game. And you can get this data set and you can go and test out and change the data, and you can make graphs and you can analyze and you can change whatever games is involved. So you can control data sets a lot easier instead of finding real ones. I think that's a good use of like data literacy and AI. And then afterwards you can like do surveys and stuff and change whatever games are played.
And do you address with the students also the way AI uses data itself, in that awareness of how AI works on what it bases its responses? How's that part of data literacy, and how do you approach that with the students?
I mean, that's again maybe another leg where the main focus is to understand AI, and maybe there isn't anything called AI. It's something we talk about, but real artificial intelligence doesn't exist. So when I do this, I actually learn them about machine learning and how a machine learning algorithm works, what kind of data it needs, and how much data it needs. I do a lot of courses for teacher where I explore large language models, and we've built our own, or we're hosting our own, so we know how it's built. And also like the discussion about black box data and how it might be ethically wrong to use these models as we do, and there might be like someone who goes against it. And then again, large language model, they use text as data, but if we create pictures, we'll need pictures as data, of course, voices and so on and so on. I also talk about how it uses a lot of energy, of course, when you work with data, and also how data is biased, because you cannot like be unbiased when you choose whatever data you are going to need while creating artificial intelligence.
Yeah, really important, I think, lesson to learn for the students, right?
Yeah, there's one more point that I go out, because I do the alignment with like a search engine, because when you ask a search engine for an answer, you'll get the most possible answer at the top. Of course, there's also sponsored content stuff and stuff like that. But when we talk with AI, we are talking with a machine that needs to be unpredictable. That's like its thing, and then it cannot always choose the most popular answer. So when you are talking with an AI, it always rolls a dice in creating its answers, and that's also why it hallucinates and creates answers that is not true. Yeah.
Okay, fascinating. Maybe linked to that, given that AI is such a prominent topic also in schools, do you see any good opportunities for cross-curricular projects involving data or using data and developing students' data literacy? Maybe even whole school projects where students utilize data about the school in some form or way? Are you familiar with any examples along those lines?
I was a part of one project where we investigated like the use of smartphones in the classroom, because this classroom have always have banned their phone, but now they went to seventh grade and they got the permission to leave the school, and then the school said, okay, then you're allowed to have your phone, because if you leave the school it might be a good thing. And then really quickly, the teachers found a change in student behavior because they got their phone. They thought they were less outside playing football. They thought they were more tend to be antisocial, like go away from each other and just sit by themselves with the phone. And it made the parents of the class make an uproar. They wanted the teacher to just take the phone back again and ban them again. And the teacher in the classroom, he was like, yeah, I can do that and be very unpopular. I can like ruin a lot of very important relations with the children if I just ban them again. So he made a decision together with me, actually, where we decided to bring the children on a journey where we use data to investigate what the consequences is, to make it very clear for the children, and to give the children a voice, like give the student a voice to recommend the school new smartphone rulings. So we used AI to learn about well-being. What is well-being in school? What is important for the children and for the classroom? And then we used AI again to come up with good questions for a survey regarding smartphones. And then the students in pairs created a survey, and then the teacher collected survey questions. He created a big survey where he took a lot of questions who were very similar out of the survey. And then the final survey was handed out to all the students, and they answered it in 3 classes. And then it was anonymous. And then the student got the data. So the answers from this survey was handed out to the students. They were made into new groups, and in the groups they should analyze the data, the answers from the survey, and then they should come up with recommendations for the school board and the parents and the teachers to decide the new rules. And it was very, very interesting to see, like, also again, bias in data. There was also a lot of new knowledge for the teachers regarding how important and what they use the smartphone for. So there was definitely new perspective. I mean, a lot of the end results and recommendations was that the pupils wanted to have the phone back, even though that the teachers have heard from a lot of the students that they liked having their phone banned. Those voices weren't heard because of it was the majority of the data. So the recommendations, they looked at the majority of the pupils and not only those voices who wanted it back. So the recommendations were leaning towards they should keep the phone. Yeah, so it was just like a good way to use data and learn about data literacy and the importance of data. And we called the project like tiny data, or small data. It wasn't like a big data set. It was only very locally, but it was very relevant for the students.
Yeah, so many teachable moments there across so many different subject areas, or just the principle of student voice, listening to the students and getting them investigate their own data. I think so powerful, so really fascinating. And can I ask, what was the end result? Where the town standard?
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, the end result was actually that they went the teachers were changed. They were on board with banning them, but they felt like now they had the power and they had the voices of the students who themselves recommended like where it could be and shouldn't be used. like in not in classroom, and in only in some breaks, not in all breaks. And with that tool they could actually easier, like, remember, you gave those rules, so they were keen to bring the phone back in the class and not ban him. But then we got like this national ban in Denmark where the Ministry of Education wanted to, yeah, make school boards around the schools make the decision for the whole school. So yeah, they heard their voices, but yeah.
And we're overruled by the ministry. Fair enough. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. Really fascinating. Can we come to maybe some of the struggles that teachers face? I think you work with a lot of teachers and you probably talk with them a lot about these topics. So, what are difficulties that teachers commonly encounter when they work around data literacy with students?
I mean, there's different stuff. I think like good and relevant data sets for school use can be hard to find. It's very complex if you want like really relevant data. So that's one big obstacle. And also just like the complexity of both like collecting data, analyzing data, using that data to like present in some way. It's very, very complex, all in all. So I think there would like good processes would would be like needed in the beginning for teachers, where they can use it like as a plug and play learning material. I've been working on this for 4 years and I haven't created anything that I really want to share yet. So it is, and it is time consuming. Yeah, but I think with AI we are one step closer to making good learning materials within data
I was going to say,
literacy.
because for the first challenge or the first problem that you mentioned in regards to actually having access to relevant data, I mean, you've already talked about two solutions: get the students to create their own data sets in a way, and or create simulated data with AI, which could be yeah, an easy way to sort of address that. But indeed,
I had a dream or a vision about like the pupils or the students finding a problem in the classroom by collecting their own data. So, like creating a device using a microbit or another technology that could collect data, and then they maybe have
hypothesis.
hypothesis about around like maybe the students don't like their school dinner. Can we collect data on that? So every after every lunch they put in like a number regarding how good they like their food, and then maybe they can find some similarities in the data. But it's very hard.
But in the future classroom lab, don't you have also these machines with sensors that measure like the noise levels or the air quality? I mean, okay, you need the technology for that, but
Yeah,
that could also be a really interesting starting
yeah.
point, no?
Data collector that is not just, now everyone works with sound. They need like deep knowledge around the technology and the
Mm.
possibilities. Like dust is a data point you can collect, and there's very there's a lot of opportunities. So you would need intensive learning in the technologies before you can go on to this data project. And that's also one of my findings by doing this is it's not easy. It's not normal for a lot of teachers to use these technologies. So you need that out there first, then the children need to learn the technologies, and then you can do this data
Mm.
collecting with technology
Okay.
project.
Yeah. Very complex, a lot of steps involved in that. So if a teacher comes to you and say, okay, this is fascinating, I'd love to do something along these lines, what kind of support resources or professional learning opportunities can you point to that they might be able to benefit from?
Yeah, I mean, we do courses and learning materials, and I do create like boxes with learning materials that I have made teacher guides to, so they can lend. So in Denmark, we have this national lending of learning materials, which are free for the schools. So that's often something I point towards. And then also there is like a lot of online tools where you can work with data. And regarding what municipality you live in Denmark, you have access to those tools, and I'll recommend tools within
Yeah.
those
Are you
areas.
familiar with any European or international initiatives that teachers can benefit from? Any chance?
No, I mean, I think like if you go all digital, a lot of the like block coding platforms is a good way to start. If you should use like variables and lists to create stuff online, so that could be Scratch or it could be Make Code, Code Arcade. You can use it even while like making games online, you'll need a lot of data if you want to create like an inventory for a game or HP bar stuff like that. So I think like block coding on various different digital sites could be a good way to talk about data. But you need to visualize what's data and why is it data and why are you working with data literacy? Because if you don't do that, I don't think the children will be aware of it.
In Denmark, are there specific offers for teachers to develop their own data literacy? Is there any offer along those lines?
No, I think for teachers right now, we have this new subject, technology comprehension, which is the best way to go around it, and it's getting to be a part of math as well. So I think when math teachers get like educated further on right now, the technology comprehension and data literacy is going to be an important part, because it is what they are lacking regarding the new subject right now.
Great. Let's move on to talking a bit about the impact of the work that you've been doing on students, or the work that you've been outlining on students. What type of changes have you observed in students when they begin working with data more regularly and develop a deeper understanding of the impact of data and how it works? Any thoughts on that?
I think one of the biggest eye-openers right now is that for a long time, and I think still this counts for a lot of young people, they haven't talked or haven't been very aware of like data privacy. And because when we work with data and it gets so like in your eyes what it is and how much it is and how valuable it is, more and more students are reflecting on what data they actually want to share and what social platforms they actually want to be a part of, what things they want to post and not want to post. So it's kind of like they're critical about like data privacy as a result of working with data.
Okay. Well, I think that's a really powerful impact, no? I mean, I think that's one of the big struggles at the moment in helping students deal with digital media, social media in responsible ways. If teaching data literacy in this way can help with that, I think excellent, right?
Yeah, and especially because of Denmark's relationship with the US right now, and for the last couple of months, there's been a lot of like awareness around American, or like let's just call it non-European tech. Is there a European like option that you can choose if you want to? Yeah, you use an AI, but as you know, we struggle with good technology solutions from Europe. But it has been very, very like visible that we are only using non-European tech, and even though there's like a movement towards using the other thing, we don't have the options right now.
Okay, but if those conversations are happening, if that awareness is being generated, I think that's the first step to achieving a change there. Although, I mean, it's a long-term situation that we need to address there.
Yeah,
sure.
It is, and it's a hard battle.
Indeed. Great. Okay, well, we're coming to an end, so I'd like to close with some questions that can really, I don't know, help teachers get started with this. So can you suggest just one small activity teachers could try to start building students' data literacy? Just one sort of small takeaway that a teacher listening to our podcast can try out in their classroom tomorrow.
Yeah, so for primary, I would again recommend doing investigation regarding your subject, but make the students choose the subject that they want to investigate within your subject, but made it student born. So they have ownership over that investigation, and then exploit what is the data in this investigation, what is and how is it valuable, and how did you affect the answers? Was there an option called others, and was the others just one thing, or could they write their own thing there? So investigation in primary, and then for like secondary and upper secondary, I really think like diving into AI and exploring simulated data sheets where you can talk with the sheet, you can remove columns and rows and add columns and rows. That is like a place to go for data literacy, because again, it's very relevant data you can work with because you decide whatever the topic should be.
Great. Two very practical, concrete things for our colleagues to start out with. Final question then. I think, well, you've given a lot of very concrete and examples that are not necessarily very technical or ideally shouldn't be intimidating, but you probably still experience many teachers who say, okay, data, I don't really want to touch it. Sounds too mathematical or too technical. What advice would you give to them?
I mean, I think you work with data whenever there's data everywhere, and especially in the school, there's a data that you decide that it's data that decides what you are going to do all the time. And again, I would say for the best possible school right now, student involvement is what I would suggest to you to investigate. So just by listening to the students, you get data that could change like the way you teach or what you teach. And if you also make that clear for your students, you're already working with data, and you can say, okay, I collected data and used it in this way, and I made decision regarding what the data tells me. And then you can always build on top and on top, but start easy, like maybe in that manner.
Yeah. Excellent. Many thanks, Jakob. Really fascinating conversation. A lot of very concrete examples and ideas for the colleagues listening. So many thanks for your inspiring ideas and examples and sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck for all your future work. So to our listeners, many thanks for listening. We'll be back with a new episode next month. So keep an eye out on the European School Education platform. Many thanks to all. Goodbye.